to agenda item 10C, discussion regarding a rate and fee study for water, reclaimed water, and wastewater funds. And we have a presentation from staff. Welcome, Erin. Good to see you here in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm just pulling this up real quick. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. Erin Young, Water Resources Manager. It's a pleasure to be on your agenda tonight to introduce the next rate and fee study for water, reclaimed water and wastewater services. Shoot, slideshow. I can't see it down.
Oh, you need to add your notes?
Thank you. No, we don't need notes. Great. Thank you. And I have the pleasure of introducing our new Water Services Director who will be presenting this tonight. I think it's fair to say that this is a pretty routine topic for you coming with 25 years of experience with another utility. So with that, I'll introduce Mr. Shannon Jones.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, thank you. My name is Shannon Jones. I'm the Water Services Director. I'm here with this informational item to really just lay some groundwork as we talk about really planning documents within utility. And so a few of those planning documents that you will hear a lot about are things like master plans, financial plans, capital improvement plans. Again, a lot of plans within the utilities. Some of them interact directly with each other and some build on top of each other. This study that I want to share with about tonight is a piece of a planning document. I would say specifically the financial plan for the utility. The utility does maintain a 5-year financial plan that looks at many aspects. And one of those aspects, or some of those aspects would come from a rate and fee study. A study looking at particular components that really make up how the utility spends money, where revenues come from, how much water produces, and how water is used by the community. So again, with that being said, in order to develop and update some of our plans requires these types of studies to really take an inward look at our data, to challenge assumptions, and to really benchmark and test, are we on the right path with maintaining a successful utility and helping to support the success of a community such as Flagstaff. So, I'll change this. I'll multitask. So a rate study is really a financial document that takes a look at, again, what are operational costs, upcoming and needing replacements, what does our capital plan look like, what is the level of debt service that the utility is carrying. So again, these expenses, making sure that they're covered by revenues that come in from sources of how much water is produced, how much customer uses, and how do you compare those? So again, looking at total revenue, what is the sustainability, right? What is the predictability of those revenues? These would all be things that a rate structure study would look at. Ensures that we are in a position that our rate structure and the fees that we charge are intentional, and they're also defendable and transparent to the public and the customers that we serve. I think, in addition to just looking at how much expense is coming in, how much revenues cover those expense, debt service and capital improvement plans, a study also gives us an opportunity to look at things kind of above the bottom line. And so again, what we've heard from public engagement, specifically city councilors and our water commission, is the desire to take a look at additional things such as how our rates are tiered, how charges are distributed against customer classes, to revisit allocations between reclaimed water and the actual treatment of sanitary sewer. The ability to take a look at what would seasonal charges look like? How would that impact outdoor and indoor watering? And what would that mean for the community? Difference between capacities, buy-in fees, construction and development. How does that impact us as a community, and how does it impact our rate structure? And also evaluating the social and business equity lens. Again, looking for efficiency versus volume. I think a couple slides that are informational only, kind of examples of what we would see as the data come through, but really identifying our for water classifications, again, residential, fire services, different customer accounts. But what is our base charges, what are peak demands, and the customer-related classes? Like, these are things that have to be looked at, and from those, how do we develop, through the data, things such as average flows, peak flows, meters and bills, and how is our cost associated with providing each one of those services? Very similar for wastewater. You would have sewer classifications, and again, by volume, by capacity, the strength of the wastewater, again, how much treatment does it take to address that level of concentration, and customer-related classes. Also coming up with what were the strengths, peak flows, average flows. And again, so these are some examples how we would take the data and break it down into visuals. And we would also do the same for reclaimed water. So again, taking a principle such as a cost of service study, looking at the services we provide and what are the costs to provide each of those services, and how those are delineated across the customer classes. Again, a rate and fee study would allow us to take a look at that data, and again, additional outside principles of looking at the data through different lenses to making sure that that matches. It is anticipated a process like this would take somewhere from 12 to 18 months. A lot of data that would be processed, that would be looked at, models that would be built, take into account other things like evaluating sensitive priorities, policy reviews and how those align with our business practices. What are the revenue needs and how are those assessed? Of course, the cost of service, knowing what it costs us to provide those services. I look at rate structure and design and alternatives. There's multiple ways to do that, and what are the pros and cons that would bring to the community. Allowing for public engagement and education. Working through a process, through a community, again, working to be transparent that the things we're working on, that data is made available, but also encouraging that feedback to really talk about making sure that we align with the values and the direction, right, the targets and that the community is trying to meet, and the role that water services plays in that. And if needed, adopting those strategies and structures to meet that. I think just to pause on that one for a second again, I believe, again, taking a deeper look to make sure that the water rate structure that we have, setting aside how much it costs and who's gonna pay for what, but the structure that we do that, I do believe would reflect the values of the community. A simple example would be, again, a community with a value in water conservation would typically have an increasing charge bucket, meaning the more water you use, the more that you would pay, right? It wouldn't be a fixed rate where everybody just pays the same amount. The more you use, the more it charges. And so looking at the city of Flagstaff's rate structure, I can see that kind of already built, especially in the residential, which leads me to believe that one of the values of the community is conservation. As more water is being used, I can also see an increase in that cost, right? So definitely incentivizing the conservation and my willingness to use less water, and that I could see the return on that investment. So again, hearing from the governing body, what would that look like what would that look like across other classes? And again, what would be the pros and cons of those? So with that being said, again, a cost of service, to really understand where it costs us to provide the service, how do our rates and revenues cover that, is a great financial look. Our ability to dig into some more policy and sensitive matters and engage the public through a conversation is really our desire moving forward. It is typical for a rate structure to occur every 3 to 5 years. Our policy actually calls for it to be done every 3 years. It has been we're a couple years behind on that, and we're looking to ramp up to get that done. And so with that being said, we have been working to get these things identified, get them into a scope, and in a short time in the future, come in before the governing body with a recommendation to enter into a contract to accomplish this rate and fee structure. Prior to that, I wanted to make sure, one, my chance to stand before you and talk about what that means to me, but also to hear from the governing body on any concerns you have or what that means to you. And so with that, I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Councilmember McCarthy?
Just make a quick comment. I was on the Water Commission when we went through this process a couple times ago. And the philosophy then, and I think should be now, is that when people use a lot of water, that they should pay more per unit volume. In other words, reward people that conserve water and people that use copious amounts of water should pay for it. And that encourages conservation. I guess the only question is, do we want to extend that to, say, reclaimed water also? We might want to do that. One thing to keep in mind is reclaimed water is a future water source. And the other thing I kind of wonder out loud is, at what point are we going to start thinking about full treatment of our water? This council, well, the previous council actually, went down and did a tour of the Scottsdale water plant, and they do a much more thorough treatment of their water than we do. And at some point, I think we will have to do that too, for various reasons I won't get into. So I guess the question in my mind is, will we start thinking about that now, or are we just going to ignore that for the next 5 years? I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And welcome to the team.
Oh. We had no public comment registered for this item, correct?
Mayor, we do not.
Yeah, I didn't think so. All right, so before we move on to the next item, we are going to take a 20-minute break. All right, we are down